Hi, I'm Catherine Chen, and this is the story of how my passion for teaching led me to uncover a family legacy worth billions. Though my wealthy in-laws took their time learning its true value. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't in bank accounts, they're hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows where to look. I still remember the night everything changed. I was sitting in the formal dining room of the Richardson family mansion, surrounded by antique furniture worth more than my yearly salary, while my mother-in-law, Eleanor Richardson, dissected my career choices over roast duck. A teacher, Catherine? She delicately dabbed her lips with a monogrammed napkin. Surely with your Stanford degree, you could find something more. Ambitious. Something worthy of the Richardson name. My husband, Thomas, squeezed my hand under the table. He warned me this dinner would be difficult. His parents had never approved of him marrying a public school teacher, especially one whose family they deemed ordinary. I love teaching, Mrs. Richardson, I replied, maintaining my composure. My students. Yes, yes, she waved her hand dismissively. Your students, but darling, you're married to the heir of Richardson Global Investments. How does it look when our society friends learn our daughter-in-law spends her days in a public school? Thomas cleared his throat. Mother, we discussed this. Catherine's work is important. Important? Richard Richardson Sr. finally spoke up from the head of the table. Do you know what's important, son? The $3 billion you're set to inherit. A legacy built over generations, and you've married someone who plays with finger paint and alphabet blocks. I felt my cheeks burn. I teach high school history, actually, advanced placement. Oh, even better, Eleanor's voice dripped with sarcasm. You can tell your students all about how you married into real history. The Richardsons have been shaping American finance since the 1920s. I thought about my own grandfather then, Professor Lai Chen, the renowned archaeologist who disappeared on his last expedition when I was 12. He taught me that true history wasn't in mansions or bank accounts, it was in the stories we preserve and pass down. Speaking of history, Eleanor continued, we're hosting the museum board's annual gala next month. Perhaps, Catherine, you should skip this one. Last year's conversation about your career was rather awkward. That's when Thomas surprised everyone by standing up. Enough, Mother. Catherine is my wife. Her work educating young minds is more valuable than. Then what? Richard Sr. thundered. Then our family's reputation? The Richardson name means something in this city. We can't have it associated with someone so common. I stood up too, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I should go. Catherine, wait, Thomas reached for my hand. Yes, perhaps you should, Eleanor said coldly, and take some time to reconsider your choices. We've been patient, hoping you'd grow into your role as a Richardson. But really, a teacher? In public school? I walked out of the dining room, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear Thomas arguing with his parents, their voices rising. I drove home to my grandfather's house, the one place I felt truly at peace. While Thomas and I owned a luxury condo downtown, bought with Richardson money, as Eleanor loved to remind me, I kept my grandfather's historic Victorian home as my private retreat. The house sat on the outskirts of the city, its weathered elegance a far cry from the Richardson mansion's opulent showcase. But within these walls lay something far more precious than the Richardsons could imagine. I made my way to my grandfather's study, unchanged since his disappearance 15 years ago. His last letter to me sat framed on the desk. My dearest Catherine, remember, the greatest treasures aren't always what they seem. Keep teaching, keep learning, and when the time is right, you'll understand my legacy. My phone buzzed, Thomas calling. I let it go to voicemail. He was probably still arguing with his parents, trying to defend my career choice while they plotted ways to mold me into their idea of a proper Richardson wife. I ran my fingers along the spines of my grandfather's books, ancient texts about lost civilizations, archaeological journals, and his personal diaries from decades of expeditions. The Richardsons might have their billions, but this was my inheritance, a love of history, of learning, of uncovering the stories that shaped our world. A knock at the door startled me. Thomas stood there, his tie loosened, looking exhausted. I'm so sorry, he said, stepping into the study. They had no right. They meant every word. I cut him off. They've never thought I was good enough. Then they're blind, he pulled me close. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Your mother's right about one thing. I'm not Richardson material. I never will be. Good, he said firmly, because I fell in love with Catherine Chen, not some society clone. That's when it happened. As Thomas leaned against Grandpa's desk, his elbow hit a hidden lever. A soft click echoed through the room, and a panel in the bookshelf swung open. We stared at the revealed passageway, a cold draft wisping from the darkness. Cat, Thomas whispered, did you know about this? I shook my head, my heart pounding. Grandpa's last expedition. He said he'd made a discovery that would change history, but he vanished before he could reveal it. Thomas pulled out his phone's flashlight. Shall we? I thought about Eleanor Richardson's sneering comments about my common background, about my grandfather's final letter, about all the stories he told me of treasures hidden in plain sight. Yes, I said, taking Thomas's hand. It's time to understand my legacy. What we found in that hidden room would shake the Richardson family's world to its core. But that was just the beginning. The beam from Thomas's phone illuminated a steep staircase descending into darkness. The air grew cooler as we made our way down, my hand trailing along the rough stone wall. Your grandfather built this? Thomas whispered, his voice filled with awe. He must have, I replied, remembering summers spent watching Grandpa disappear into his study for hours. All those times he said he was working, he was down here. The staircase opened into a vast underground room that took my breath away. Climate-controlled glass cases lined the walls, each containing artifacts that belonged in the world's most prestigious museums. Ancient scrolls, delicate pottery, gleaming gold relics, a collection that spoke of civilizations lost to time. But it was the center of the room that made my knees weak. A massive vault door, modern and intimidating, stood like a sentinel guarding even greater secrets. There's a keypad, Thomas pointed out. Any ideas? I approached the vault, my fingers hovering over the numbers. What would Grandpa have used? Then I remembered, he always said the most important dates were the ones that changed your life. I typed in my birth date, 09-15-1990. The vault door hissed, hydraulics engaging as it slowly swung open. Oh my God, Thomas breathed. Inside, bathed in carefully controlled lighting, stood the lost treasures of the Ming Dynasty, artifacts that had disappeared centuries ago. Priceless porcelain vases, imperial jade seals, gold-threaded royal robes, and at the center, a dragon throne that history had thought lost forever. This is impossible, I whispered, spotting my grandfather's journal on a nearby desk. These pieces, they've been missing for hundreds of years. With trembling hands, I opened the journal to its final entry. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, you finally found what I've spent my life protecting. These aren't just artifacts. They're your heritage. Your grandmother's family were the secret keepers of the imperial treasures, protecting them from looters and colonizers for generations. I married into this legacy just as Thomas has. The responsibility now passes to you. These treasures are worth billions, but their true value is in the history they preserve. Use this wisdom wisely. All my love, Grandpa. Cat, Thomas said softly, do you know what this means? This collection, it's worth more than the entire Richardson fortune many times over. I sank into Grandpa's old chair, my mind racing. This isn't about money, Thomas. This is history, my history, culture that was almost lost forever. Just then, both our phones buzzed. Eleanor had sent a group text. Thomas, Catherine, your absence from dinner was quite rude. We expect you both at tomorrow's board meeting. Catherine, it's time you learned what real responsibility looks like. 9 a.m. sharp. Thomas looked at me, a slow smile spreading across his face. Should we show them what real responsibility looks like? I thought about Eleanor's countless jabs about my common background, about Richard Sr.'s dismissal of my career teaching history, about the Richardson legacy they were so proud of. Not yet. I said, a plan forming in my mind. First, I need to make some calls. The next morning, I walked into the Richardson Global Investments boardroom exactly at 9 a.m. Eleanor and Richard Sr. sat at the head of the table, radiating disapproval. Catherine, Eleanor began, we've been discussing your role in the family, and… Actually, I interrupted politely, I have something to discuss first. I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's display screen. The faces of the world's top museum directors appeared in a grid. The Louvre, the British Museum, the National Palace Museum of Taipei, and others. Ladies and gentlemen, I address the screen. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. Eleanor's perfectly maintained smile faltered. Catherine, what is this? Mother, Thomas stepped forward. You wanted Catherine to learn about legacy, about responsibility, while you're about to learn about hers. What happened next would change not just the Richardson family, but the entire art world forever. The boardroom fell silent as I pulled up the first images. On the massive screen behind me, thousands of years of Chinese imperial history glowed in pristine, high-resolution detail. As you can see, I addressed the museum directors. The collection includes over 300 pieces previously thought lost, including the Yongle Emperor's personal seal and the legendary Ming Dragon Throne. The director of the British Museum leaned forward in his video feed. This is extraordinary. The authentication papers? I held up my grandfather's journals and documentation. Full provenance along with my grandfather's detailed conservation records. The Chen family has been protecting these artifacts for generations. Eleanor's face had gone from confused to ashen. Chen family? I thought your grandfather was just a professor, Professor Lai Chen. The Louvre's director cut in. Was the most brilliant archaeologist of his generation. His disappearance was a terrible loss to the field. And you're saying he entrusted all of this to you? I nodded, watching Eleanor and Richard Sr. exchange panicked glances. Their concept of wealth, stocks, real estate, hedge funds suddenly seemed very modern and very small. The collection's estimated value, I continued, is approximately $12 billion. But its historical and cultural value is incalculable. Richard Sr. actually choked on his coffee. $12 billion, nearly 4 times the Richardson fortune. However, I raised my voice slightly. These artifacts don't belong in private hands. They belong to the world. The museum directors murmured in agreement. I'm proposing a global exhibition tour, followed by permanent installation in a new museum we'll build right here in the city. The Chen Richardson Institute for Historical Preservation. Thomas stepped forward. Richardson Global Investments will provide initial funding for the museum's construction, a way to give back to the community and preserve priceless history. Eleanor found her voice. You can't make these decisions without board approval. The Richardson name will benefit enormously, Thomas cut in smoothly. Imagine the headlines. Richardson family helps preserve ancient imperial treasures. Much better than wealthy family sneers at education, don't you think? The museum directors were already discussing logistics, their excitement palpable even through video screens. I could practically see Eleanor's social climbing mind racing to catch up, from disparaging my background to suddenly being connected to one of the greatest historical discoveries of the century. Catherine, she said weakly, I had no idea your family was so distinguished. That's the problem, isn't it? I replied quietly. You never bothered to ask. You were too busy judging me for being just a teacher. The next few months were a whirlwind. The announcement of the Chen Collection's discovery made international headlines. The Richardson family, led by Thomas, earned worldwide praise for their support of the museum project. Eleanor, ever the social chameleon, quickly became the collection's biggest champion. My brilliant daughter-in-law, she now told anyone who would listen, comes from a long line of cultural guardians. We're so proud to support her vision. The Chen Richardson Institute broke ground a year later. I insisted it include a state-of-the-art educational center where students from public schools would have free access to history's greatest treasures. My grandfather's study remains exactly as he left it, secret vault and all. Sometimes I sit there, reading his journals, understanding now why he pushed me to become a teacher, because preserving history isn't just about protecting artifacts. It's about passing knowledge to the next generation. Yesterday, I received a letter from one of my former students. She's studying archaeology in college now, inspired by her visits to our museum. You taught me that history isn't just in textbooks, she wrote. It's alive, waiting to be discovered. And sometimes the greatest discoveries are hidden in plain sight. As I sit in my office at the Institute, overlooking the museum grounds where school buses unload excited children, I can't help but smile. On my desk sits a photo of my grandfather, next to a jade piece from the collection, a small carving of a teacher with her students. Eleanor stopped by earlier, already planning the museum's first anniversary gala. Darling, she said, I've been thinking. Perhaps we should start a scholarship program for aspiring historians. After all, education is so important. I thanked her politely, remembering her sneers about my teaching career. People can change, I've learned, when their eyes are open to true value. Thomas and I still live in my grandfather's Victorian house. The Richardson mansion, with all its marble and gilt, never felt like home. Here, surrounded by books and history and the echoes of a legacy I'm still understanding, I feel my grandfather's presence. Last week, a reporter asked if I regretted just being a teacher all those years before discovering my inheritance. I showed her my classroom in the museum's education center, where I still teach weekly history classes to wide-eyed students.